Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where we've had quite a few X-Men headlines over the past few days. Why? Because Fox isn't going to Comic-Con, so they don't have to save any big news stories for the big convention. So we've talked Gambit and Deadpool 2 rolling before cameras in 2017, and today we're going to talk X-Men on the small screen, an initiative that Fox is still very gung-ho about. And they've actually managed to partner up with Marvel Television for this. I know there are rumors about Fox and Marvel teaming up for movies. Those are still just rumors, but they are working together for the small screen. However, I would like to point out that Jeff Loeb, who runs Marvel Television, and Isaac Perlmutter, who runs both comics and TV, have nothing to do with Kevin Feige. Kevin Feige fought hard for that separation. He was like, get those crazy guys away from me. And he was largely talking about Isaac Perlmutter. But Feige was able to successfully lobby Disney to separate the Marvel movies from the comics and television to be its own division, with Feige reporting directly to the head of Disney Movies, Alan Horn. So just because, Fox and Marvel are all palsy on the small screen does not mean that it's going to happen necessarily on the big screen. But we shall see. Anyway, we all know that FX is going to have Legion from Fargo's Noah Hawley. We've seen a still with Dan Stevens from Downton Abbey, and that's coming along nicely. However, the latest announcement is that the main Fox television channel, the network channel, they want a Marvel show too. They already have a lot of DC shows. They've got Gotham. They have Lucifer. Lucifer, I don't know how big of a hit that is, but Gotham, I think Gotham's a solid hit. It always trends when it's on. It was much better in season 2. I've liked it the whole time, but finally a lot of people joined me with season 2, and when it decided to focus on villains. Always works with Batman. Although, of course, since they have baby Batman, what choice do they really have? But anyway, Fox would like to balance that out and have a Marvel show. And why not? They still own the rights to some Marvel properties. I would be interested maybe to see Fantastic Four go to TV maybe at this point, come to think of it, considering I think they've burned every bridge possible when it comes to Fantastic Four movies for the time being. But obviously that's not going to happen anytime soon because they haven't announced it, and I think they just want to give Fantastic Four, you know how much of a breather they're going to give Fantastic Four? However long they can before it would revert back to Marvel if they didn't use the brand, right? Whatever is stipulated in the contract. So anyway, there was going to be a show called Hellfire, but the people who were in charge of that creatively ended up working on the new 24 show, 24 Legacy. So they couldn't do Hellfire. So they're going to do a new show, which I believe is going to focus on the Morlocks. And I think the evidence for it is pretty strong. All right, so anyway, it's going to be an hour show run now by Burn Notice's Matt Nix. He's going to be the creative person on that. People watch Burn Notice. I don't watch Burn Notice. I watch Suits on USA, and I would prefer that creative team was taking over. But anyway, now it's this Matt Nix guy. So do any of you watch Burn Notice, and is it any good? But anyway, the setup is going to be that two parents discover they're normal humans, but they discover that their kids are mutants. So they go on the run from the government, standard stuff, but here's where it gets interesting. They join the mutant underground that is trying to survive. And that, to me, says Morlocks, the famous group of mutants that live underground in the subway tunnels of New York City, usually, kind of like Killer Croc, basically. And there's a whole thing with Storm fighting Callisto for the power of that, for control. And also the massacre of the Morlocks is a huge storyline for Gambit and for Angel becoming Archangel. But of course, we all know that the comic book continuity for X-Men is totally out the window because Fox was like, oh, that's not important. And then Marvel was like, wrong, it is important. And now lately Marvel's like, you're right, it's not important. So it's crazy because Captain America did not die at the end of Captain America Civil War. But anyway, and also they changed a bunch of other stuff as well. But I think, it could be pretty good to do the Morlocks because it would be something different. It would be a little darker. And also they would be able to have, if it's taking place underground, it can't really, they don't have to worry about knocking into the movies, right? They're like, as long as our movie characters don't go underground, we're good, right? So I think it's a clever idea. I'd be curious to see how it turns out. I really like Gotham. I really like Supergirl. A lot of people love a lot of the DC comic book shows that are on right now. So it's a very healthy space, let's say, I guess you could say right now. However, we're going to talk about another X-Men-like property later on in this episode. And I think one of the biggest problems that the X-Men have sometimes is that there are so many other properties. Like you can't put a copyright on groups of individuals having different sets of powers, right? I mean, they can't call themselves the X-Men and live in a mansion in Westchester and be run by a bald guy, et cetera, et cetera. But so many other shows have been able to kind of do their own version of the X-Men. So it's tough for them, I think, and especially in the TV space. So they're going to have to work really hard to be like, no, we're the major brand. We're the ones who started this. Let us show you how it's done. All right, so anyway, the second story of the day, I should have gone maybe into the X-Men ripoff, but Zendaya's a big star, or going to be a big star. Now, she, of course, has her fans from her time in tween TV land, right? But she's trying to move into movies hardcore, and she seems to be doing it. So she's not only in the upcoming Spider-Man Homecoming movie, sweet gig, but now it looks like she's going to land in Hugh Jackman's musical, The Greatest Showman. It was going to be called The Greatest Showman on Earth, but now they're just calling it The Greatest Showman, which I think is a good idea. But anyway, Zendaya is repped by CAA, and this is a wonderful example of what a good agent can do for you with the right connections. Of course, Zendaya had to be a kind of a big star to begin with, but CAA obviously was like, we can do something with that, and do something with it they are. So anyway, this is Hugh Jackman's passion project. Fox is very grateful to him for what he does with the X-Men movies as Wolverine. So they're like, you want to make a circus musical? You go make a circus musical. But it's taking a little bit of time. It's set to come out, I believe, Christmas 2017 at this point. Hugh Jackman seems to think it's an awards contender. We'll see. Does everybody remember Water for Elephants with Reese Witherspoon and Robert Pattinson and Christoph Waltz? Probably not, because it was a giant turkey at the box office. But anyway, maybe this will do better. I don't know. I think, Les Mis obviously did well with Hugh Jackman, but it was Les Mis. This is an original musical with new songs, and we'll see how it does. It's supposed to be based on the life of P.T. Barnum, who was considered like the first, I guess you could say, what's the Kardashian mom's name? I think it's Kris, right? Oh, Kris Jenner, yeah. So he was like the first Kris Jenner, right? If you want like a modern day example. And say what you will about the Kardashians, but Kris Jenner does a damn good job promoting them, right? So basically that's who P.T. Barnum was. So Hugh Jackman's going to play P.T. Barnum. Zac Efron is signed on to play a playwright who becomes his right-hand man. And now apparently they both need love interests. So that's who they're signing on right now. Michelle Williams is going to co-star as Hugh Jackman's love interest. It's good thing they clarified that, because she could easily be Zac Efron's love interest, but whatever. I don't know. I think Michelle Williams, I thought she did a good job in Oz the Great and Powerful with James Franco, but I don't know. She gives me bad box office vibes, I feel. I'd be nervous about putting her in the project, especially also with Zac. I'd be like, Hugh Jackman, even you are hit and miss at the box office. Why would you surround yourselves with people who are even more hit and miss at the box office? We don't know about Zendaya just yet. So anyway, we've got Hugh Jackman, Zac Efron, Michelle Williams, and now Zendaya, who would hook up with Zac Efron. And you know what? I think that's maybe a pretty interesting choice, because she has a similar look to Vanessa Hudgens, who of course was Zac Efron's sweetheart on camera and off with High School Musical. So maybe they're trying to recreate that. They're like, did you like High School Musical? But I don't know. If you're a Vanessa Hudgens fan, I think you would be kind of loyal to her and be like, you can't replace Vanessa Hudgens. All right. So anyway. But Zac Efron's like, I'm not working with her again. So anyway, that's the second story of the day. And I'm curious, does that sound like a good movie to you? Do you think it's coming together? It certainly doesn't sound like an Oscar contender, right, with that cast? But maybe that should have been a summer movie. I don't know. Also, of course, Moulin Rouge is one of the great, kind of circusy musicals of all time, and it's going to have to compete with that as well. But anyway, how does it sound to you as both an awards contender and a box office contender? And do you think you'd want to see that for Christmas 2017? Or would you want to see Episode 8 from Star Wars? Oh, why does anybody else bother to release a movie at Christmas time? All right, so anyway, the third story of the day is that Kung Fu Panda's Jennifer Yu Nelson, she's directed Kung Fu Panda 2 and 3, is moving to live action. Yay! This is so wonderful. She is not only another animation director to move to live action after Andrew Stanton and Brad Bird. She beat out Jennifer Lee from Frozen, which I find very interesting. But she's also another Asian talent behind the camera on the rise. Asian talent in front of the camera, still not doing so great, but behind the camera, on fire. We have Justin Lin, who's doing the new Star Trek Beyond. John Cho, not doing so well, but at least he continues to get work. He just did Now You See Me Too, doing very well in China. And then, of course, there's James Wan, who is a mega star when it comes to directors. But Jennifer Yu Nelson's going to be adapting a young adult trilogy. Oh, scary, but you know what? She just wants to get on a live action. But because young adult novels kind of not so popular right now as movies. But it's called Darkest Minds. Curious? Anyone read it? But anyway, it's basically mutants post-apocalypse, right? It's X-Men meets The Walking Dead. So something comes and kills a whole bunch of people on Earth. Most people die. Who's left? Some of the kids start having mutant powers, and the powers that be that emerge are like, that's dangerous. Let's go take you and sequester you in a mansion in Westchester. No, a mansion in New Jersey. You can't sue me, Marvel. But anyway, some kind of base. And the lead is a 16-year-old telekinetic, but not Jean Grey, who escapes and then goes in the woods and forms like the X-Men with other escapees, right? So I don't know how, it sounds like pretty weak actually on paper. You're like, oh, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole as an audience member or a studio. However, Jennifer Yu Nelson did such a good job with Kung Fu Panda 2 and 3, not only with the action, but just absolutely stunning visuals. So let's see what kind of budget they give her to work with. She might actually deliver something, pretty watchable. All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day. Now on to the viewer question. Speaking of budgets, Andy Ramirez had a really great question. So Andy says, hello, Grace. Greetings from Miami, Florida. Hello. I have a question. I have been watching your videos for like 5 years and I love them. That means so much, Andy. I've noticed you always talk about how movies should lower their budgets to make a better profit. Yes. However, shouldn't the sequel to a movie be bigger and more impressive than the first one to give the audience a reason to revisit that world? This sounds really difficult to accomplish with a lower budget, especially in today's movie industry, as there is just so much competition. Furthermore, big markets like China prefer more CGI and action-heavy movies that require big budgets, rather than the more intellectual, dialogue-driven films. Have there been any movies that have done this successfully? And what would you say movies need to do to make this transition successful? Fantastic question, Andy. I love the way that you worded it. Very, very nice. So Andy, I think I want to clarify here. I think that you want to have a smaller budget for the first movie. And then yes, your budget has to grow as the franchise progresses. But we're seeing movies like Ghostbusters and Legend of Tarzan that have ridiculous budgets, 150 and 180 accordingly. And that's just too big for a kickoff movie, right? It's just too much money. So yes, when it comes to big franchises, the budgets have to be raised with each successive entry, but even then they shouldn't be expanding at the rate that they often do. And I think that's usually due to salaries. If I wanted to save money in Hollywood as a studio, I would be like, I'm going to give you guys points. Like, your salaries aren't going up very high. I'm going to give you guys points back end, and then you'll make your money there. So go promote the movie. You have a vested interest in it. We'll see. I think Marvel's pretty good at keeping their budgets under wraps, or at least in check. They still spend like $250 million on a movie, but look how big the casts are, look how many visual effects they have, and look how much money they make at the box office. But when you have an untested film, you really should not be spending more than $100 million. And I do have 2 examples that did this. Deadpool, which we always talk about recently when it comes to budgets, just $58 million. Now, I said in my review that I think Deadpool needs a bigger budget because it didn't have as much action as I would have liked. But 58 for the first entry. Let's see how this does. Fantastic. It did great. Let's give it a bigger budget. And Kingsman, the Secret Service, which has its own sequel also coming up, which is currently shooting actually, that was made for just $94 million. So I wouldn't do a first entry in a franchise for any more than $100 million. I really think they need to keep that down, especially because they're probably going to spend close to another $100 million on the advertising. So Andy, that's my answer to your question. But I think you're exactly right about the situation that a lot of studios find themselves in, why you need to spend $100 million on these entries anyway, but that's considered low for Hollywood these days. But yes, with each new sequel, they do need to raise the budget totally, not only because of the competition situation, but also because of places like China. And China is just such a huge juggernaut when it comes to the box office. They can deliver more, the same amount, if not more, that the U.S. box office can deliver for a movie. Although how much the studio actually sees, we don't know, because China's a little cooking the books over there. All right, so anyway, that's today's morning movie news. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories and Andy's viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.